Hi, everybody. We're here. We made it. I'm so excited. We have Karma with us, and we have Claire with us. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves? Oh, hold on, guys. I got an audio issue. Give me 1 second because you guys, for some reason, are not coming out of. You were coming out before and you're not coming out now, and that's interesting. Let me just.
It's
All right, try speak now. Why? Why is OBS being weird all of a sudden?
Are we muted?
There you go. Now you're not. No. It was something in the properties that got backwards. I don't know why. It was fine before we went live, and as soon as we went live, it was like, screw you. But it's good now. So, sorry. I apologize. We've got Karma. We've got Claire. Please, Claire,
Hello.
introduce yourself.
Oh, hello. My name is Claire, and we're here to talk about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard with Cheshire and Karma.
I'm Karma, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having us, Chesh. I'm excited. Lots to talk about.
There is so much to talk about, and I've been looking forward to this. We got postponed by about a week, and I've actually been looking forward to this for a little while because I've been following it, but I think I've been a little bit more tertiary than you guys have been in regards to what's gone on in the United States so far, because I followed what had gone on with the UK, and I was like, wait, what? That's some nonsense. And so I'm very curious now. I looked through some of the material that you guys had provided already, and there's a lot in there, and I think what Claire had suggested, which I think is probably the best route, is to kind of talk about how things started, and so how you can kind of follow how you got from point A to point B, which kind of puts into perspective sort of the situation as it is now.
Right.
So you went like a timeline. You're starting with the allegations that started actually with the divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think starting with the divorce is probably a good place to start. So if you want to kick us off there, Claire.
Okay. Well, basically, without getting all legal, there was both sides claim abuse and a bad relationship, and they both petition each other over and over again and try to stop other people from talking. They end up getting divorced like within 18 months. And after that, there's a lot of stuff going back and forth in the press. And basically, an interview is done by Amber Heard, claiming that she was an abuse victim and that she's lived the Me Too story and just pretty much threw her ex-husband under the bus and ruined his career. That's it on my side up to that point, if somebody wants to help.
So I remember during their divorce or before their divorce, when there was I'm not. This is what I'm not entirely sure about the timeline here. There was Amber getting hit in the face with a phone and Johnny Depp getting his finger cut off.
Yeah.
The tip of his finger cut off, and I'm not sure if that was before the divorce, during the divorce, or was that one of the allegations? Because I remember hearing about Amber saying she was being abused, and I was like, really?
Right.
That's awful. But I was like, but maybe let's wait and kind of hear a little bit more about what goes on with this, because there's something. This is I'm getting red flags from this. And then there was Johnny Depp getting his finger chopped off, and I was like, whoa, holy shit.
If I remember correctly, all of this is happening prior to the last 911 call, which was like May 21st of 2016. And then she filed on him like 3 days later for divorce, like on the 23rd or something like that.
Yeah, it was right around the same time.
Right.
Cool.
It was like 2 days later. And all of those little snippets and videos and stuff that you see were all prior to that, because they were being leaked. They were hitting, the media. it had a little bit of a stagey feel to it, because like a divorce proceeding and a 911 call like within 2 days, like it seemed a little staged to me. I'm not going to say anybody that none of it happened. It could have, and it probably did, but I do think it was
You
more
mean that like the timing
two-sided.
was kind of
Yeah,
like one didn't happen because of the other. They were both going to happen anyway. Like
yeah,
you knew the
exactly.
police
Yeah.
was going to call and they were already ready for the divorce papers. And now that can be a completely legitimate thing. That could not be like
Exactly.
conspiratorial or legitimate. There are some people who prepare for divorce and for leaving an abusive situation well ahead of time, and then they call the police and then they have everything already ready to go and filed, and so they're out of there, which is sometimes what is recommended. So that's not necessarily. I don't think what you're saying is really that far-fetched, because sometimes that's the way you set things up on purpose so you remain safe, right?
Exactly. Especially if it's going on, you would obviously have to have some kind of plan if this is all going on. And I mean both parties. I'm not talking about one or the
Right.
other. If this stuff was going on, they both obviously had to have some kind of plans back and forth to get to they were obviously unhappy
Yeah.
with what was going on in the situation.
When we were talking about that earlier, that both of them, you can be a different person in a different relationship with someone else. Sometimes two personalities, when they come together, it's just, explosive. And so though he may not have a history, playing double advocate here, but though he may not have a history with DV, um, it doesn't mean that he wouldn't, with another person necessarily, especially when you put drugs and alcohol in there, which they were clearly lovers of and, abusers of. So what about,
So
okay,
so
yeah,
We all just went at the same time.
I know that's why I stopped.
You want to go ahead, Claire?
I was going to say I agree with that, and it just for me it just got so much worse after that, because I take what Karma just said, and then I see everything that happened after that, and it was almost like, how can I, like, I'm not happy with what happened. I didn't come out of this as the good guy, and I'm talking about both parties here. And after that, there was such an onslaught of what can I do to you, and how can I use this to make me look good and you look bad, and there was so much of that going back and forth.
yeah,
And for me in the beginning it got to be you didn't know who to believe or what to go on. Like, you always want to believe a victim, but you're not really sure how many victims there are. Like,
right. You want to
Yeah,
err on the
there is
side
a
of caution.
situation.
Yeah,
You could get into a situation really easily where everybody is the victim and everybody is the abuser at the same time. That's a thing that could happen.
sure.
Somebody could abuse somebody. Both parties can be abusive, and so both parties are a victim of the situation. That doesn't mean they're
Right,
not responsible anymore. So like even if you were to
right.
take, this is something that I had said in my video where I was kind of frustrated with what WB had done. And it's a double standard of saying that, hey, Johnny Depp did these things, so we're gonna drop him, as if him doing anything absolves Amber from anything that she did. And so
Yeah,
it's a situation where you either need to, if you believe that Johnny Depp did all this stuff, which I haven't been convinced. It doesn't, a lot of things don't seem to line up, and a lot of what I read in the testimonies that were provided in the UK court system made me lean towards that a lot of this is blown out of proportion nonsense.
yeah.
And that Amber Heard just lies a lot.
Yeah,
So
the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, right? So what she has done in the past in front of witnesses at the Seattle airport when she was with her girlfriend, she assaulted her in front of, different witnesses. She was in the airport. So, and the woman ended up not. It was what was her name? Van Ray or Van Ree.
mhm.
She ended up not pressing charges, which is typically unfortunately, what the victims do. And that's the other thing I learned, is that people that, from this attorney who was helping a friend of mine who was a victim of DV, typically, or not typically, I should say, but sometimes the abuser is good at getting their ducks in a row first and being proactive when it comes to like a TRO and things like that, that they put it out there first because they know inevitably the victim is going to, is going to accuse them of doing what they've done. So
Getting ahead of it to cover your tracks, or making sure that even if they
Right.
did, you're in a better position to defend
Right.
yourself against whatever they're going to say. It's
Yeah.
the thing that you hear Amber say in one of the recordings of, I didn't hit you, I didn't hurt you like that, that didn't happen. I may have swung my arm in your direction, but like, you're not hurt, you're fine. And it's like,
Yeah, it's like,
you're gaslighting this person.
right. Okay. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's unfortunate because legally, even though there's video of those assaults happening, and even though there's like witnesses, without the victim pressing charges, they weren't allowed to really. That all got kicked out. Like, you're not allowed to use it. That really affected, I think, the uh, him not being able to get that libel
Right.
in the UK,
In the UK
because they
cost.
weren't allowed to use anything. They weren't allowed to use past
Yeah.
history if victims didn't come forward and file. If there was nothing actually documented legally about any of it,
Which is kind of bizarre because Amber was allowed to do that. There were
Right.
police reports that she said existed that didn't say what she said they said. But so she was allowed, that worked in her favor for some reason.
Police report, she was allowed to do it, but like they had the
right, but it
video
didn't.
of
But
the
it didn't
airport.
go in her
Yeah.
like. But that police report didn't say what she said it said. But for some reason, they still took it as if it did.
Yep. So is it a gender issue? I mean,
Well, it was definitely biased. I don't know if it was yes, might be gender. Basically, they were saying because you can prove abuse, not that
yeah.
they proved abuse, but because abuse is provable, because you can say it either happened or it didn't happen, that it wasn't libel. They're allowed to say whatever they want. Like, I didn't really think that was fair.
Well,
I
it's
think
in
there's
the
a difference in questions,
Yeah.
right? There's a question of, can you say that Johnny Depp may be this thing? Yes, that would be part of reporting. However, can you say Johnny Depp the wife beater? I think you may have jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah. This Tina is saying, and I do remember reading this now. I had forgotten about this point. It's a good point. Her own sister had, I don't know if she testified, but I do remember reading something where she had said, that Amber pushed Johnny down the stairs and he was sort of defending himself. So that says something. And it also became clear that the parents really loved Johnny, and that they, in text messages that were released, they were supportive of him.
Yeah, I think there's a few things in relation to that, and it has to do with Amber taking advantage of social stigmas. So there's a social stigma that men can't be abused, or women can't be abusers. And it's like, you see this kind of social stigma when you talk about like children being assaulted. So like, if a teacher assaults a child, when the headline is written, if it's a woman and a male student versus if it's a male teacher and a girl, they're presented in a completely different manner, and there's so much like apologetics that goes around a young boy being assaulted, when you hear people saying things along the lines of like, oh well, good for him, and yeah, I would have loved that one, and it's just like, no.
And at the end of the day, the publication, whether it be the Sun, a magazine, whatever, their goal is to sell magazines. Their goal is to sell. It's the bottom line, and it always is more provocative, I guess, if it's the woman is the, victim. But how laughable is it that she was named the UN human rights activist? What the hell?
That's straight up bonkers.
Yeah, you get a medal for hijacking a movement for your own selfish purposes. Like that just blew me away. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that you would think would get rescinded when you find out she didn't actually donate dick all to the causes she said she did.
Yeah, like, why aren't they talking about that more? I mean, she got a $7 million settlement in the divorce. She says she's going to donate all that money, and she donates less than 1%. to the cause that got her everything she wanted, you know.
Right.
It blows my mind. It does.
Yeah, and that's part of what turned into the what Amber Heard was saying and did is debate. Like, people have been kind of talking about and debating winning or losing the libel case, and winning or losing for Johnny Depp at this point doesn't necessarily mean that Amber didn't. And that's one of the flaws of the justice system. The justice system relies on following a specific procedure, and that procedure can allow people to get away with things that it's otherwise very clear that they did if, say, video evidence for whatever reason is not permitted, particularly in a libel case versus whether or not he's taking her to a court for abuse, which is an entirely different thing. So the libel case didn't actually prove whether or not, or didn't rule, I should say, whether or not abuse took place. It just decided that the Sun was in the clear for publishing the way they published, which is a completely different conversation than did somebody do an action.
Right, and we were discussing this earlier before we went on, but how bizarre is it? I am so not familiar with the judicial system in the UK, but how crazy is it that after the case was adjudicated and the judge had ruled in favor of the Sun, as it pertains to those certain claims, of course, that he says there's no appeal. Like, you have no chance of appeal because the evidence is not likely to, he didn't say this, but something along the lines of the evidence isn't,
if the court was to deny Johnny from having an appeal, then they would say something along those lines. That would be the route they would be taking. And I think what you were saying is that it's bizarre that the judge that adjudicated the case is the one that gets to make that decision.
Right. It should be a fresh pair of eyes, like it is in our system. You should at least be able to appeal, and then it gets shot down, maybe, but to put an end to it before it starts is
I think that's an argument of utility, right? So does it make sense to have a fresh judge have to educate themselves and go through this entire case to then look at the appeal and then see if there's anything that has changed or has just been reworded, or like, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of man hours. So you could make a utility argument one way or the other, but there's also probably rules that we're not familiar with, not being from the UK, that have to do with when it's acceptable to deny an appeal versus when it isn't. And I think that has to do with, like, what we talked about before, which was new information. So if this information was not allowed in this case for some reason, and so they appealed so that way they can submit that information, that may count as new information, because depending on why it was rejected in the first place.
Right. Let's see. It's without a jelly donut. That's really funny. Is saying, was he cheating? I think they're referring to Johnny, and it just brings up the point that, not that it's like hardcore evidence and totally been proven, but Amber is now has a girlfriend, but while Johnny and she were together, she was caught in the elevator. There was some camera evidence of her with Elon Musk. And I think there was one other person. So she doesn't seem to be someone with much moral or advocacy.
She's not much for standing by her obligations or her word via those obligations. Like, I donating all this money to this charity that I didn't do.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like the incident, I remember, and this is when I started going down the rabbit hole of this case, was when I saw TMZ release that video where she had set up the camera, her phone, and he was drinking and slamming, cabinet doors, and he looked like a monster. But if you put things in context, which is so important, he had lost his mother, I think the morning prior to that, and she had been out all night. So you got to take things into context.
The thing that's
the video in the kitchen Is that the video in the kitchen, Karma?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it. Mhm.
And at the end of it, she actually laughs when she turns off the camera. She chuckles. Is that the one?
I don't remember seeing that part, but yes, they are in the kitchen because you see him slamming and he has the wine bottle and he's like,
Right.
pouring a big ass glass of it. But
That just
There's
shows like context is everything because like if you didn't
totally,
know the other part of that story, that looked really bad. Although
right?
in
Yeah,
his defense, he's kicking inanimate objects. He never laid a hand on her. He didn't go anywhere near her that we saw,
yeah.
except for when he saw that she was recording him, he grabbed for the phone. Like you can tell
right.
he's going for the phone.
Yeah,
And
there's
and
there's a line that you can draw between something that would be considered physical abuse versus something that you would say as emotional or verbal abuse. And
Right.
so if you present that kind of a situation, you could without context, you could paint Johnny Depp as a verbal abuser, but not a physical one.
right, but
And in that one, you
even
might not even be able to pull emotional, but
but then
verbal
you could
maybe.
flip it and you could add that context as the defense for him and
Absolutely.
say, look what Amber's doing on the morning that his mother just passed. She's more concerned with videotaping for her divorce than she is
Right.
supporting like a person that's in
Right.
trouble. Like it could flip both ways.
Well,
It
you
looked
could
really
even go a
bad
step
either.
further than that, and you could say that if Johnny Depp does not know that Amber is planning to divorce him, and he is viewing
Yeah.
her as his wife, somebody who he expects to support him, to have her then come home and push his buttons right after his mother died and bait him and berate him, she is then the emotional and verbal abuser in that
Exactly.
case, and him snapping and
Cool.
defending himself in that way. As soon as you throw that context in there, it flips everything on its head. But that's the thing, is you've got somebody who is presenting it to you who is removing context. And what have we talked about on Caffeine Corner when people are
Context.
taking
Yep.
context out of things? They have an agenda.
They
Right.
have an agenda, exactly. And he may not have
Mhm.
been aware of that, or if they were even, she was going to file. I'm not sure who filed. That's one thing I do not know,
I'm not sure.
but I think the divorce was final in
I
2017.
I do believe it was Amber that filed.
Was it?
I think
I can
I
Google it.
won't
I can double
swear
check.
by it, but I'm pretty sure. It's like May 23rd, maybe 2016,
Hmm.
but I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's just, I mean, my dad used to do criminal law before he started his own business and does personal injury. And one of the things he always told me is people that are in love do crazy things. People don't act the way they normally would when they're passionate and in this embroiled and
Quick, I just did a quick Google search. Quick Google search says it
yeah,
was Amber that filed.
it was Amber.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what yeah, Brainy just said that too in chat. Thank you.
Yeah, there's
Right.
the thing is that when there's a bit of a problem when it comes to like social justice and how things are viewed in the public and how you can take advantage of that. And
Sure.
Amber was obviously taking advantage of the situation, and because she's the one who had control over the information and what could come out and when it could come out and what the context was that it did come out, it should be very telling to people especially people who believed her, people who jumped on her bandwagon and have been now at this point, I would probably argue, tricked and taken advantage of. And
Yep.
and realizing that, hey, the context was missing, like, it's not a big deal, it's not a problem to say, hey, with this new information that it was the evening of his, or the day after his mother died, and there's probably a good chance that the dude didn't sleep all day, he's been up for over 24 hours, and just
Right.
because that was when she died doesn't mean that there wasn't already emotional stress going on like days prior to that, depending on the conditions of that situation, which I don't know about. But
Sure.
there's an amount of charity that you can grant to Johnny that you can't grant to Amber.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. As far as, I don't know if you guys want to get into this yet, but with the bruises and how it didn't look the same the next day, the bruises on Amber's face,
Hmm.
we, we had talked about that earlier. I wonder, I was thinking, how can that be determined? How would you know at what stage the bruise should be in the healing process? And I was thinking maybe, I don't know how much money that they're going to throw into this. I guess they have an endless amount, but would they get an expert to come in and say, at the day after the alleged beating, should, the bruise would be in the yellow green phase, or like, whatever it should look, and can that be covered up with makeup? It's difficult to do. I know.
Yeah, I would argue that I try not to pick on things that are not like very clear. A bruise can develop over an amount of time. So a bruise that she had here, that she now has a more prominent one here, doesn't mean that this one didn't already exist. It just didn't, it hadn't shown yet. But when you have something disappearing, you start running into some problems, and there is something to be said for what makeup can do. And when you have that much money, what makeup and what people do they have access to make that a lot easier? So I think that's a sort of a weak argument. I think there's questions you could dive into, but I think it's sort of a little bit more of a weaker argument that I don't think you would necessarily need.
It's like if they can't actually like relevantly add it, but they can use it for discovery to find other things. Like they can now depose everybody at that party she was at the very next day.
Or the makeup artist, right?
Yeah, and try to get the makeup artist because there was like all kinds of like nothing actually concrete, but there was all kinds of stuff going on about that.
Right.
But all of this, even though it was all like pre-divorce, it all comes into this defamation case, both defamation cases, because it's all about whether that abuse actually really happened and whether you're allowed to talk about something you think happened and ruin somebody's career and take it even farther. Like, because they keep saying over and over again, if you can prove somebody is an abuser, like a fact or not a fact, then it's not libel. And I just don't really stand with what the judge said about that. It opens up such a hard line to take here in the United States. That wouldn't happen. Like it doesn't matter. At the point that it happened, he wasn't proved to be guilty of anything.
Right.
So it's defamation. Like if you did that and he wasn't proven to be that, it doesn't matter if 10 years later they discover he did do it. If at the time she's saying it and ruining his career, it wasn't proven.
It was that article. It was that article that she wrote that she was quote unquote representing the Me Too movement on based on what we've discovered is at worst complete nonsense that she just made up to further her image, and at best she's just as guilty as he is. And so they're both abusers and they're both victims and they both should have the same consequences. It's garbage that he's getting treated so poorly by the industry, by people in general, but she isn't, when there are facts of the matter of her admitting to hitting him. There's video and audio of her hitting him. There's him getting his finger cut off. These are established facts. These are not speculation, whereas everything on Amber's side has been wishy-washy at best. So and it's infuriating to see, like, why? Because he's a man? So it's easy to demonize him? Fuck you! Who cares about justice if it's easy?
Definitely. Double standard, but it was the climate. It was the climate that made it right for her to actually hijack that movement. It didn't matter what she was saying because she was not a very credible or believable person. She had more enemies and more people coming out and say, yeah, right, like we don't believe that. But it was actually a hijacking of the movement. It was the climate at the time.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
Something that I noticed is there's not a whole lot of people in their industry or people that would be in their circles or in that world supporting Amber. The only support you see is like the hypersensitive SJWs. The toxic part of that is the only one. You have to believe all women no matter what people, which is bullshit. And we've demonstrated how that's bullshit in the past.
Her own sister, her friend, people that are close in her inner circle, they are not standing up for her. They know something's up. Like they're not.
Her own parents are supporting Johnny in this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You also have noticed that there's been a couple celebrities that have spoken that have dated Johnny in the past, as well as people that have worked. Like I'm pretty sure one of the most prominent ones is probably James Franco, who's been like.
Right.
So you
Like,
don't
I
really
don't know that.
see. Yeah, so you don't see anybody in the industry. It's all very very one sided. But you
Yeah.
notice that that's you could say that, well, the industry is against women or something like that. But that's not what happened when Harvey Weinstein came out.
Right.
When all that
That's
shit
right.
went down, it wasn't that, oh, we have to support Harvey Weinstein. There wasn't a whole lot of people supporting Harvey Weinstein because he was important. There was a couple,
Right.
but not comparatively. And in this case, you've got
Not-
nobody supporting Amber.
But look how
No.
long it took to finally get that guy in front of a judge. I mean,
Right.
years of abuse. He got away with it forever. And finally, so gender plays a huge role, in both situations.
But that's the thing. It's the anger in that movement about a situation like Weinstein that made it so hard for Johnny Depp to get justice in this, because nobody was gonna
Yeah.
just, even though we didn't see enough there to say absolutely 100% stand behind Amber. Nobody, even though we all thought that, nobody was going to get out there with pickets and say no, like, hey, this isn't right, because the
Amber
movement was so
didn't.
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Right.
ex-wife, I mean, when your ex-wife comes out, and I believe, well, it's
For-
speculated that he was cheating with the painter, or no, who was it? I don't know. He was moved on fairly quickly. Maybe it was to Amber from the ex-wife, and she has no skin in the game. I mean, she doesn't,
No,
for her to support him and say he's not never done this
no,
is
she
kind of a big deal.
publicly came out and said in 14 years that never happened, and we've had issues. There was cheating and drinking and lots of ups and downs,
Right.
and no abuse ever happened in 14 years. He's got 3 children. He's not a saint. He admits to not being a saint. Nobody's sitting here saying he's like, 100% right, like, all the time. He's definitely got issues, but he didn't deserve what happened. And
When.
also
Yeah.
what's happening now with the court cases. They argue over $600 who's going to pay a legal thing, and they go back with 3 or 4 different pieces, filings in the court over. I mean, that's what she's doing. She's arguing over $600. I mean, it's really sad.
There's a when Amber came forward, people questioned her, but not. I didn't see a whole lot of people attacking her right when things started. It was when she responded to questions poorly or didn't, when people were asking for clarification. And when people started to realize that Johnny seemed to be the victim in this case, that people then started supporting Johnny Depp, and people were pissed. People were pissed at her. And so, like, I don't think that anger is going away, because I think that there's a shift that's taking place. I don't know if it's completed. I don't know if it's run its course or not, but there was a shift that happened, and it went from Amber Heard is representing victims, and specifically women, to Johnny Depp is representing all of the men who are unfairly treated and unfairly tried and treated poorly by the system that is currently seemingly stacked in women's favor.
Right. It is. You wouldn't think, you just wouldn't think in 2021 that it would be that way, but always in progress, always trying to, change these things.
I think there's a good number. I want to hope that a good number of women who consider themselves feminists, not third wave feminism. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Third wave feminism. My God. A lot of people who are actually speaking for equity and equality and wanting abuse to be treated seriously advocate despite gender. Johnny Depp's gender does not matter. It is just as harmful to wrongly accuse somebody to then, like, what are you doing? That harms the movement also.
Yeah, the progress is just negated. I mean, we go back, 3 steps. Once we've accomplished 1 step with people that use this, there's always going to be people, who manipulate the system. It's unfortunate, especially when it's so publicized. People see this and may say, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to speak out, or,
or I'm not going to believe victims because this one woman lied about everything. Katie Joy.
That's what, like,
No.
you just stopped me dead with that, Jess. Thanks. I was going to say, definitely took away from victims in general. And that's why I get a little upset about the hijacking of a movement, because it does more damage than good.
Well,
it definitely makes it hard to support her. And it takes some legitimacy away from a movement and from the real victims. It kind of like re-victimizes them. And that shouldn't be happening.
There's also actually another layer to that, and it has to do with if the movement does not disavow what Amber has done, if they choose to support her anyway for whatever justification or reason they provide, they're setting a precedent which other people are going to be able to take advantage of. It opens the doors for people to just make arbitrary claims where somebody gets just shit on. One of the things that I think people might, if people have been following me for a little while, they may have heard me speak a little bit about the Vic Mignogna situation. Vic Mignogna is a voice actor who had a lot of allegations come out against him, and a lot of them were from the 80s or early 90s. So the evidence in these cases, like the hard video or pictures, is a little bit lackluster. It's not really quite good enough, but there's two mistakes that people that were supporting Vic Mignogna did: attacking people with like death threats, and expecting the victims to do the investigation. It is not the victims. When a victim goes to the police, it's the police's job.
Oh, you're back. She's back. Okay.
There we go. Okay, sorry. The stream also cut out, so you'll have to repeat yourself.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It was just I had a whole little bloop, so we should be fine now. But you can go